Okay, so this is our next phase in Project 6, which is our packaging design, and I need to share with you guys some of the do's and don'ts. This is one of our students. They're working on this particular packaging, and she didn't know, so I'm not trying to come down on her or anything. She didn't know that she's not supposed to drag from Illustrator and from Photoshop into InDesign, okay? In other words, when Illustrator or Photoshop is open, you can't do a select all, copy, and drag it to InDesign. Well, you can, but you shouldn't. The reason why is it embeds everything. There's no link graphics. It makes the InDesign file huge. It creates huge problem solving. When somebody needs to problem solve your files, it's almost impossible to do that. May not have the right printer setups and the other, or color setups in the other software. So I'm going to work with this here in just a second, but I want to start new with a document. I don't have her template. I have the one I created on Tuesday. So initially when you start your document, now, I know Descena's document is going to be fairly large. We're going to have to print on 2 pieces of paper. But most of us, we can print on the 12 by 18 paper that I have. So right now I'm going to say 11.5 is my width on my paper by, let's see, it's 12 by 18 is what I have, but it can't print edge to edge. So it'll be 11.5 by 17.5. It's about 1/4 inch that it takes off around the edge. Oops, I'm in picas. 11.5 inches by 17.5 inches. Okay, so just setting up the document should be 11.5 by 17.5. Take your margins off. Put those on 0. You don't need margins on this thing. That's what that little template that we created in Illustrator is for. Take margins off. Make them 0. Don't worry about a bleed. We're going to actually be creating our bleed in the document, so don't put a bleed on here. It's not going to help you out any. Okay, that bleed setting is for the document that would be actually that shape. Okay, so here is a blank 11.5 inch by 17.5 inch document. If you wanted to change this to inches, you're more than welcome to. You right click on the rulers. Each one you have to do this individually, go from picas to inches. Again, you have to do that on the left and at the top. Now I'm going to I have my Illustrator stuff that I did on Tuesday, which has my box template. So I do have a box template created in Illustrator. Looks like this. But I do not copy and paste it from InDesign, even though I can, I shouldn't. So I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Place. Okay, anytime you want to put anything graphically into InDesign that was created in any other software, you always go to File and Place. If you guys want to get a job in this industry, this is how it works. Copy and pasting does not work out. You won't keep your job for very long. So this is a File and Place. I'm going to go find my box template that I created. And I'm going to place it. Not the TIFF, but the AI file. Now, normally we save Illustrator files as EPSs. For now, I'm okay with it as an AI file. It'll still work, okay? So we're going to click on the AI file, the Adobe Illustrator file. I'm going to open it. And then I click and pop it in there. So this is the one I created Tuesday. Now mine happens to be this large. Yours might be smaller. If yours is larger than this, because your packaging is fairly sizable, we may have to make your document larger, and we may have to print on 2 pieces of paper. So Descena is the lucky girl. 2 pieces of paper. Yay! Now what I typically will do, I will center this both vertically and horizontally just to keep things nice and clean. So if I want to do that, what I would do is I will go to Window, and I will bring up my Align panel, but you don't see an Align panel here, because it is InDesign and it likes to hide it, and it likes to hide it in Object and Layout. There's the Align. And we'll get an Align panel that comes up. Now if your Align panel is short like this, that's okay on InDesign. Sometimes in Illustrator we have to extend it out and make it bigger. So we want to align this thing to the page. So make sure where it says Align To, you click on the little icon next to it, and you make it align to the page. Mine is already like that. Usually by default it's aligned to selection. And we can move this and change this, but right now I want it to align to the page. So I'm going to align these objects both centered on the vertical and centered on the horizontal. So I do both center, vertical, and horizontal, and it's actually centered for, oh, I don't have it selected. Select it, then tell it to center horizontally and vertically. There we go. Now I'm going to close that out because I don't need it right now. And I'm going to now, so this is how you place the template. I would lock that template and I would create a new layer, and I would start designing on the layer above it. Okay, always lock that template layer. If you want to rename the layer, double click on it, put the template, hit OK. But make sure you lock it so you don't accidentally design on it. Design on the layer above it. Now I am going to now switch to M's file because I want to discuss some problems. Here's M's file. Now she had copied and pasted, and we've worked with that. She now knows not to do that. But we did see some challenges that were coming up here. So let's assume that this is just an outline template, but we do know that she wants this lighter blue right here and the darker blue right here, and then this lighter blue right here. She wants that there. Now I don't know if I have her template. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Fabulous. Thank you, Em. I have your template. Now it's not linking up to it. That's why it's pixelated. I don't have her actual AI file, but this will work. Now when Em is wanting to put a color in this area right here on this tab, she was working so diligently in trying to make it perfectly fit within that shape, and that's not necessary, plus it doesn't count for a bleed, okay? So what we want to do, I'm going to create a new layer. Whoops, excuse me, I just turned my layers off. I'm in a new layer, I should be okay, yep. I am going to just simply draw a box, okay, the size of, or about the shape of that, that flap. I'm going to color it with whatever color I want and stroke it with none, preferably. So I'm going to go with a different color of blue than M because I don't want to go in and have to build these colors. I'm being a little lazy in my demo. Notice how I'm always zoomed way in. That helps because you want to make sure things are dead on it. You want it accurate. You want things meeting up to one another. Okay? Now this accommodates for the bleed, and how do I know it's an 1/8 of an inch bleed? I don't. If you want to know if it's if you're getting out there an 1/8 of an inch at least, you can use the rectangle tool. I'm clicking elsewhere and I'm going to type in 0.125 IN, which should be P9. Yep. 9 points by 9 points is also the equivalent to an 1/8 of an inch. This square right here is an 1/8 of an inch. Now, unfortunately, if I fill it with a color and stroke it with none, it makes it smaller because that stroke was part of that 1/8 of an inch. So sometimes I have to redraw the square an 1/8 of an inch. Let me see if I'll do it without the box. Oh, P9. Tries to remember what you did before. It'll probably still be a stroke, but at least we'll be able to tell that at the edge of the stroke is an 1/8 of an inch. If I pull this over here to the edge of my template, I know that this blue box that I created is a little bit bigger than an 1/8 of an inch. Guys, as long as your bleed is at least an 1/8 of an inch, you're okay. Okay, so if you have something bigger than an 1/8 of an inch, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, that needs to be exactly an 1/8 of an inch. But if you are a particular person and you want it to be exactly an 1/8 of an inch, you can pull this down so it matches roughly the height of that box. Now conversely, I need to see if I have enough out here. Again, I could use this little guy as my sort of guide, and I'm like, okay, this aligns with the edge of that box, and this is going to go at least an 1/8 of an inch out. Okay, I know that has an 1/8 of an inch bleed. So if you wanted to create a little 1/8 by 1/8 inch box and use him, you know, eventually delete him, but use him as your little guy to know if you have your bleeds pulled far enough out, because this is such an unusual shape that we didn't bother to create a bleed line, and it's really okay that we didn't. We just have to pull our colors that far out. Okay? Now, so when it comes to this, I'm going, okay, this is pretty good, but I have another color here that's a darker blue. So maybe I'll take this little guy and I'll alt drag and hold shift down and I'll copy him, and he's exactly in the same position, and maybe I'll make him a darker blue. So let me get a new color swatch and I'll make him really quickly a dark blue. Oh no, we have somebody leaving. Ah. It will be on Blackboard, yes. You are the best baby bear. Okay, so we're going to fill this with... yeah, everybody, yeah, remember that.
It's recorded.
Yep, it's recorded. I just filled with that dark blue, and I have no stroke on it. Okay, I'm going to make this the size it needs to be. Now this also bleeds like the other guy, but slightly differently. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my layers panel. Hopefully this isn't too confusing. I am going to click on the triangle to extend my layer, and I'm going to turn off the previous shape that I drew for just a moment. And the reason why I'm doing that is because this shape also bleeds. I need to carefully come out here, and this is going to end up in this negative space. It's going to end up being half the lighter blue, which should be up here, and half of this darker blue. Well, how do we do that? Well, I'm going to use my direct selection tool, which is the white arrow tool. And I'm going to click on one of the corner nodes. And right now, if I start to move it and the whole thing moves, oops, that didn't work. Hold down the shift key, click on the node, let off of the shift key, click on the node again, and you can move that. Now, I will hold the shift key down after I start to drag it, and I'll pull that out. And then when I turn on the other one, it appears as if the other one is trapezoidal. It's not. I just covered it with the other color. You do not have to have this blue square here, that shape on that panel. It does not have to be trapezoidal since the other guy is covering it. So if I turn that off, you can see that it goes, those colors split right between here. Okay? It does not look pretty in your design because you're like, that's supposed to be straight, it's supposed to be right there. It doesn't look pretty, but it works. In this case, too, you might want to put your template layer above the layer that you're working on. If it's too dark, you can set the transparency on it. But you definitely need to pull your bleeds, basically. I'd have to do the same thing down here. Since I like to work smarter, not harder, I will drag. Again, it works similar to Illustrator, which is what we covered on Tuesday. I'll hold the Alt key, start dragging it, hold down the Shift key, and it drags it perfectly in the same position. Make sure they line up to my grid or my template. And then on my dark blue guy, can't see him right now because he's below it, I want to bring him to the front. Object, arrange, bring to front. Whoops, not send backwards, excuse me. Make sure he's in the front. You can also go to the layers panel and just drag him up to the topmost item. And I am going to get my white arrow tool again. I need to turn off my blue shapes so I can see my light blue shapes. And I'm going to pull that out. Again, hold the shift key down when you do this so it'll stay in line. And that accommodates for that bleed. So that's actually solid. Even though we're going to cut that out, we need that to be solid. Now let's say M wanted, where's your stuff, M? She wanted this other area here to be a light blue. So I'm going to go back to this layer. I'm going to simply draw up another box, or I can just steal a box that I already have drawn, copy it, and then pull it out so that I know that it is at least 1/8 of an inch bleed. Okay, so 1/8 of an inch outside of that area. Simple stuff. Now, I don't have to worry about this rounded corner thing. That I don't worry about. This is out in the bleed. That doesn't have to be all accurate. You know, it will be cut with a rounded corner later, but I do not have to worry about that here. So when you guys are putting shapes into your template or over your template, it's going to look really odd for just a moment here because it's not going to be exactly the shape of the template. Now, if you want to, you can actually take the template, put it above the design layer. Now, we filled hers with white, so we may have to adjust the transparency. This is going to be super easy to adjust this transparency. So I just need to bring up Window, Effects, and I'm just going to take my blending mode, which is right here. It says Normal, but you'll see when I flip my cursor over, it says Blending Mode. I go to Multiply, and it will be, this is assuming I have it selected. Let's select it first. I'm on a layer that's locked, probably. Yep. Let me unlock that layer, select it, then go to my effects, put my blending mode on multiply. Oh, I can see right through it. Awesome. Go back to layers, lock that layer, which is my template layer. So the template layer can be above your design. That's fine. You know, or you can move it around. But if you're having a hard time seeing the template layer, maybe move it above the design. Make sure it's always locked so you don't design over on it. And go back to your original design layer and continue to design. Okay? So if I had something in Photoshop, and by the way, Photoshop is great for doing images and stuff, but you don't click and drag from Photoshop. But if I had a graphic that I created in Photoshop to put onto this package, which I'm going to actually just grab any old graphic right now just to save time, I would go to, excuse me, Photoshop, get away. I would go to File and Place, and I would go find my Photoshop file. Let me go find something I have in Photoshop. I know on my desktop I have a typography folder. I know I have some images in here from other projects. So let's say I have this T I wanted to put in here. I open it, I pop it in there. It's much too large. Let me resize it. Let me Shift and Command, click and drag. Oops, Shift, Command, click and drag. Try to at least. Okay, I keep on thinking I'm on a PC day. This is a Mac. I'm using the wrong keyboard shortcut. There we go. I was holding down Shift and Control because I had a feeling I was on a PC for a moment. So this guy would be in position wherever you want him. You know, these things would all be placed in InDesign, all pulled together here. I shouldn't see you lay the entire thing out in Illustrator. I should not see you lay the entire thing out in Photoshop. That is incorrect. You guys want jobs, and when you get them, you want to keep those jobs. And in order to keep jobs, you need to do things technically correct. Okay? I just got a survey sent to me by somebody taking getting their master's degree. They asked me questions about my field, and they asked me, what things do you wish you had known before you before you broke into the field? And one of the things I wished I had known was the technology much better, because I was building things in Photoshop and they were beautiful and they were all in, you know, gorgeous. And when I printed them out, they came out beautiful and they worked. But when I went to the industry, they're like, oh, you're going to be working in InDesign. And they even gave one interview. It was a $50,000 a year job. Have I told you about this? The $50,000 a year job that I just saw poof go out the window. $50,000 a year designing annual reports, and I got through I was on my third interview, got through 2 interviews. They wanted me, I wanted them, and they set me down and to the equivalent of InDesign, and they gave me they said, here are your texts, here are your graphics, here are the digital files, build this, it's supposed to look like this, and build it in InDesign. Well, I'd only built things in Photoshop because nobody told me any differently. My instructors weren't industry. They were school smart, very intelligent people, but they never told me, don't design everything in Photoshop. They're like, that looks great, it's perfect. It printed, it folded, it worked great. Just because it can doesn't mean it should. So you've got to build your layouts in InDesign. Yes, there are challenges to that, but you've got to build these in InDesign. Okay? So build them in InDesign. Okay, hopefully that helps solve some of these problems with people kind of starting things out on the wrong foot. I'd much rather get you guys early getting this right than having you to rebuild the whole thing from scratch after you build it in Photoshop or Illustrator. Okay, so that's it on this for now. I need to get back to everybody. Let me stop the